Now to Sri Lanka, days after the worst terror attack in the country, a new twist. It involves the Rajapaksas. They're not new to controversy. Mahinda Rajapaksa was the president of Sri Lanka when the civil war ended 10 years ago. His brother, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, was the defense secretary at the time. The two wielded unbridled power. They are credited with defeating the LTT terrorist group in Sri Lanka. Even out of power, the Rajapaksas remain a powerful and controversial duo. But the latest row could potentially upset Gotabaya's run for president later this year. Now, this is the news report that set off alarm bells in many a world capital. The headline is alarmist. This is what it says. Gota's intelligence czar caught red-handed as Chinese mole. The report was published by Colombo Telegraph. It describes itself as a public interest website relating to Sri Lankan matters. It is reported to be run by a group of exiled journalists. The men in question are Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the younger brother of former Sri Lankan President Mahinda Rajapaksa, and Major General Kapila Hendavitarana, a former chief of Sri Lankan intelligence agency. Now, Gotabaya was the defense secretary in 2009 when the civil war ended. It was Gotabaya who installed this Major General as the intelligence chief. The report says this man is acting at China's behest, and he is trying to obstruct the investigation into the Easter Sunday attacks. The newspaper has cited audio recordings of this Major General in conversation with a Chinese interlocutor to buttress a point. The Sri Lankan man tells the Chinese man that the Americans have stepped up their involvement in investigations. He says, and I quote, they want to give Americans free passage for any requirement if the requirement arises for them to occupy Sri Lanka, even making use of the harbors and airports. Incidentally, this Major General heads the security operations at the Shangri-La Hotel in Colombo. It was one of the targets in the attacks. The implication is that more and more countries are getting involved in the investigation, and that allows them to expand their footprint in Sri Lanka. And all of this will happen at the expense of China, something that Beijing would not want. The expose could potentially affect Sri Lanka and its ties with China, of course, not to mention how the country remains compromised even after such a deadly attack.